Show starts in 1 minute. Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family.
Like 9 out of 10 film stars, Raquel Welch uses Lux Beauty Soap.
Well, no, I like to be a woman and a man to be a man, you know.
We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. Bring your friends. There are always wonderful new pictures to see. We hope you have a wonderful time.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. The most sensible of centrist, of course. And this week we were going to have a guest on to talk a bit about some recent events in Norway regarding a book by, what's his name again, Bloody Path?
The French author Renaud Camus.
Right. But our guest had unfortunately fallen ill, so we'll have to reschedule. And instead, we are going to be talking a bit, is metapolitics the right way to put it? Maybe metaculture, even.
We're getting really meta here.
We're getting very meta. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. So yeah, hello to everybody, and I hope everybody's doing well. I was looking forward to doing the You Will Not Replace Us episode, but yeah, unfortunately, things happened, so we had to come up with something else, and so some friends in the Element chat sent us this article on what was it? Mops, sociopaths, and the deaths of subculture, which is
Geeks, mops, and sociopaths in the subculture evolution by meaningness.com.
Very nice, very nice title.
It's a very, very good. It's something that if you've stuck around on the internet for quite a while, you'll recognize the general idea of this article, but the quality of the analysis in this one is very good, and something that everyone who are listening to this should be aware of, at least. But before that, hello everyone in chat, and I see a lot of you have the members icon, because this show, and let me bring up the music as has become the norm. I think it should be playing. Yes. Because every week we live stream this show for your listening and viewing pleasure, absolutely free of charge. But there are a few noble souls among us here today, and most every week. These are men of exceptional character and heroic will that have decided to offer up $3 a month. With this offering, they are granted exclusive member status and privileges. Privileges such as members-only videos, community posts, emojis, and name badges. Let me see the Luddic Paths in the chat. The Giga Chads gracing our channel as members so far are these. Black Sox Jack, Luddic Path, Nathan CJ Hood, big contributor, Burkarl, Nord Anon, Mr. Cheerful, Bulba Inquisition, Vingle, Tom R., Nord Huger, History, Philosophy, and Lore, falling outside the normal moral constraints. Thank you so much for your support. If you want your name in this message, press the subscribe button down below, and you can become a member of this channel for the low price of a cup of coffee a month. Alright. I'm gonna stop the song. Here we go. Very good. Seeing the Luddic Paths in the chat. Very good.
Epic.
And with that out of the way, should we just jump right into it?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think this
it's not
article needs a lot of preamble. I think we can just
Well,
read
yeah,
it and
maybe
people will
if
start.
somebody knows,
So,
because I've never heard of this website before I saw the article. But I mean, it seems like a very sensible fellow with a lot of interesting views. So I just wish I had some
yes,
like a kind of pre-introduction to this author. Maybe someone in the chat can enlighten us.
maybe. It's a general website. I don't really know what the project is. It was my first time reading it today as well, and I just sort of browsed through the website a bit. And it seems like there's a book. It's either in the works or it's already out. And he talks about like finding purpose and uh, rejecting eternalism and nihilism and proposing what he calls meaningness, which I don't have any, you know, knowledge of at any level to argue for or against. Maybe that's a possible future episode, but this article on its own is worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I think we should just
Yeah.
jump right into it. I mean, it's not a very long article, but I think we can spin some discussions from it.
Let me find the tab. Here we go. Geeks, mops, and sociopaths in the subculture evolution is the name of this. He starts by saying, subcultures are dead. I plan to write a full obituary soon. Subcultures were the main creative cultural force from roughly 1975 to 2000, when they stopped working. Why? One reason, among several, is that as soon as subcultures started getting really interesting, they get invaded by muggles who ruin them. Subcultures have predictable life cycles, in which popularity causes death. Eventually, around 2000, everyone understood this, and they gave up hoping some subculture could somehow escape this dynamic. The muggles who invade and ruin subcultures come in two distinct flavors: mops and sociopaths, playing very different roles. This insight was influenced by Venkatesh Rao's Gervais principle, an analysis of workplace dynamics. Rao's theory is hideous, insightful, nihilism. I recommend it. The birth of cool. So this is oh yeah, I'll go into that. Nordanon asks, what the hell is a mop? It stands for member of the public. I think it's something the Brits use. But here as well, you can think of mop as sort of like a mop head almost. It's the mass man in any culture, really.
Yeah, I was
So
thinking
these
about
are all. Sorry.
with the image. I was thinking about the sponge almost. They're like someone who just sucks up water.
Yeah, that's
like
a
in the
good way of
picture,
putting
and
it as well.
it's kind of what they're doing as well. I don't know if that was the intention or if it's referring to some British slang, but I was
don't know.
just thinking, because they're describing. We're getting to it soon, but they're describing a sort of community member who contributes very little, and they just kind of suck up all the attention, all the entertainment, all of the time. They eat the fruit, so to speak, but they don't grow the trees.
Yeah. And this is a very, very interesting model that you can apply to a lot of things. And we farmed a couple of examples in a chat here earlier that we can pull from later. So the first part of a subculture is the birth of cool. Before there is a subculture, there is a scene. A scene is a small group of creators who invent an exciting new thing, a music genre, a religious sect, a film animation technique, a political theory. Riffing off each other, they produce examples and variants, and they share them for mutual enjoyment, generating positive energy. The new scene draws fanatics. Fanatics don't create, but they contribute energy, time, money, adulation, organization, analysis to support the creators. Creators and fanatics are both geeks. They totally love the new thing. They're fascinated with all its esoteric ins and outs, and they spend all available time either doing it or talking about it. If the scene is sufficiently geeky, it remains a strictly geek thing, a weird hobby, not necessarily a subculture. For anyone who has lived long enough and have been sufficiently nerdy growing up two prime examples of hobbies that have turned into subcultures would perhaps be something like Warhammer miniatures or Dungeons and Dragons. Although that started quite a bit before I was born, but the evolution of it as a subculture has certainly happened within my lifetime. What do you think, Lightpath?
Yeah, no, that seems to check out. Dave the Distributist also did a great stream last, I think, Friday, Thursday, on the I think it was called Killing Magic the Gathering or something, where he just goes through like his experience being a part of like the sort of early scene of Magic the Gathering and watching as that became more commercialized and then later became more of like this sort of lifestyle product instead of being like this type of vanguarded, unique, cool thing. So, I mean, there's many examples of this that we can get into later, especially when we're looking at these other characters who pop up here.
Mm-hmm. If the scene is unusually exciting, and the new thing can be appreciated without having to get utterly geeky about the details, it draws mops. Mops are fans, but not rabid fans like the fanatics. They show up to have a good time, and they contribute as little as they reasonably can in exchange. Geeks welcome mops, at first at least. It's the mass of mops who turn a scene into a subculture. Creation is always at least partly an act of generosity. Creators want as many people to use and enjoy their creations as possible. It is also good for the ego. It confirms that the new thing really is exciting, and not just a geek obsession. Further, some money can usually be extracted from mops, just enough at this stage that some of the creators can quit their day jobs and go pro. Fanatics contribute much more per head than mops, but there are few enough that it's rarely possible for creatives to go full-time with support from only fanatics. Full-time creators produce more and better of the new thing. The thing you're doing right now, streaming and using the internet in general, is also an example of this. Well, it's like we're part of it. But I would not put us as necessarily creators, because those were people who sort of came before in the sphere. We would classify a lot more as fanatics, I think.
Well, Nordanon, are you talking about the internet in general, or do you mean more like the scene that we're a part of now? If it can be called that, we're probably going to get into the semantics about the sort of DR.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably
sensible center in general, but I mean, yeah, it's becomes a bit of a semantics thing to figure out, let's say, like the birth of the internet, because it also started with like a very small group of people who were using Web 0.0 as a hobby, but I think the mass adoption, it happened, because of technological advances and infrastructure. I think more than the fact that
Well,
more
hang on a
people
moment, because you have the .com bubble, which is like an early cycle of this subculture that follows the same trajectory, right? With the sociopaths.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So the internet has actually been through this once, at least already, right? Which is an interesting facet of this theory. So the mop invasion. Fanatics want to share. Hang on a moment. Vingle says, "I wish you guys had a different slot. Always overlapping with the Texan and the Canadian. We picked this slot first, by the way. I'll just have you know. We were streaming at this slot before the frog and the giant entered the ring."
Yeah, I will second that too. We actually spent a lot of time looking through calendars to find the exact spot where we would not interfere with any other show.
Well, I mean, we are interfering, unfortunately, with Edward Dutton, but at some point we had to pick a certain date. But we were very diligent in trying to invade as few as possible.
Yeah, I don't think we were aware of his show at that time, to be honest. So
that's probably true as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, the mop invasion. Fanatics want to share their obsession, and mops initially validate it for them too. However, as mop numbers grow, they become a headache. Fanatics do all the organizational work, initially just on behalf of geeks, out of generosity, and to enjoy a geeky sub-society. They put on events, they build websites, they tape up publicity flyers, and they deal with accountants. Mops just passively soak up the good stuff. You may even have to push them around the floor. They have to be led to the drink. At best, you can charge them for admission or a subscription fee, but they'll inevitably argue that this is wrong because capitalism is evil and also because they forgot their wallets. Mops also dilute the culture. The new thing, although attractive, is more intense and weird and complicated than the mops would prefer. Their favorite songs are the ones that are least the new thing and more like other popular things. Some creators oblige with less radical, friendlier, simpler creations. Mops relate to each other in, quote, normal ways, like people do on TV, which the fanatics find repellent. During intermission, geeks want to talk about the new thing, but mops blather about sports ball and celebrities. The mops seem increasingly entitled, treating the fanatics as service workers. Fanatics may be generous, but they signed up to support geeks, not mops. At this point, they may all quit, and the subculture collapses.
This reminds me, of course, of the famous Groucho Marx quotes. I would not want to be a part of a club that would have me as a member. And that's sort of what applies to all of these mop people.
Yeah.
But I think this just is such a good summary and formulation. I think that every person with some life experience kind of in their gut knows this, and they've probably been both a fanatic and a mop. I think we've all been that on some level here. So yeah.
Bingle says, I think Geo's energy and their chemistry work so well live. Longhouse works better to catch up with after the fact than Digital Archipelago. Well, I mean, I'm not going to force anyone to stay, obviously. Maybe one day we'll do the big Longhouse Digital Archipelago Super Slam crossover episode. How about that?
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah, okay.
Anyway, let's get back to the mop invasion.
Feedback noted, Vingle. Wait a minute, was Vingle a subscriber or not? Because I need to check in the if statement if I was going to give a polite response or a rude response. Let's see. Okay, okay. Membership. Okay, right. Thanks for the feedback and a salute.
But yes, it's the idea that, you know, if you don't gatekeep the new thing or the subculture well enough, then the mops are going to dilute the average sort of quality per unit of production output of that subculture to the point where the fanatics are just going to leave and no one's going to prop it up anymore.
And what I'm getting from this is that if you have 0 mops, then it's not a subculture at all, right? Then it's basically just remains a hobby. But if you have too many mops, then that kills the subculture. So the trick, it's like a type of gardening that you have to gatekeep to a certain level of mops, like an aquarium or something,
right? Because that's the next sort of paragraph. You can keep the husk of the subculture going even if the fanatics have left, which is the sociopath invasion. Because he writes, unless sociopaths show up, a subculture at this stage is ripe for exploitation. The creators generate cultural capital, i.e. cool. The fanatics generate social capital, a network of relationships, strong ones among the geeks and weaker but numerous ones with the mops. The mops, when properly squeezed, produce liquid capital, i.e. money. None of those groups have any clue about how to extract and manipulate any of those forms of capital. The sociopaths quickly become best friends with selected creators. They dress just like the creators, only better. They talk just like the creators, only smoother. They may even do some creating, competently, if not creatively. Geeks may not be completely fooled, but they are also clueless about what the sociopaths are up to. The thing that brought this on was someone told me there's someone on Twitter named, I don't think I follow them, but there's someone on Twitter named Carnivore Aurelius who's been posting. She, I think, because that's the thing. They've been posting like trad posting for years and going on about like a meat diet and selling your products about like trad life and like return stuff, right? And it turns out that this person who put on themselves as like this weird sort of traditionalist bodybuilder, Superman, Ubermensch kind of guy is a woman who is pretty much just exploiting this to get cash, right? From disassociated young men who are like reading their base tweets, right? So it's all a grift, right? That's what brought this up. So that person would be like a perfect like sociopath, right? Because you're all these mops in the Twitter sort of population of these disaffected young men, right? Who are pretty much just consuming the content that someone like us, I guess, would be producing. And someone like Carnivore Release would be producing. The problem is, and this is what's interesting, because I have seen Carnivore Release's stuff, and what's irked me about it is kind of like how strangely hard line they've been on things. Like it's kind of like performative in the way they draw lines in the sand. And this line of like they dress just like the creators, only better. They talk just like creators, only smoother. Like this person have been posting things that are everything that everyone else has been saying, just sort of a bit more amped up to 11, right?
Yeah,
that really resonates with me.
I'm thinking about a certain doctor right now.
Right.
Yeah. There's a smooth talking doctor who shows the Trump bubbleheads.
The Trump bubbleheads.
Yeah.
The mops are fooled. They don't care much about the details, and the sociopaths look to them like creators, only better. Sociopaths become the coolest kids in the room, demoting the creators. At this stage, they take their pick of the best-looking mops to sleep with. They've extracted the cultural capital. The sociopaths also work out how to monetize the mops, which the fanatics were never good at. With better publicity materials, the addition of a light show, and new, more crowd-friendly products, admission fees go up tenfold, and mops are willing to pay. Somehow, not much of the money goes to the creators. However, more of them do get enough to go full-time, which means there's more product to sell. The sociopaths also hire some of the fanatics as actual service workers. They resent it, but at least they too get to go full-time, to work full-time on the new thing, which is what they still love even in the light version. The rest of the fanatics gets pushed out and leave in disgust, brokenhearted. So, not only can the subculture collapse, it can actually get co-opted by actors who are selfish and or evil, right?
Yes,
And
I mean,
in here also lies the whole like, the Fed allegations, right? Because this is a valid tactic to do, right? If you infiltrate any subculture and you basically act like an asshole and ruin it, well, then you've ruined the subculture, and with it, the social bonds, which is sort of the strength of it.
But do you think that's the sociopath though? It seems like they're just more interested in like the creating the grift mill instead of ruining the.
I mean, I'm saying it can be used for both. It can be used to extract wealth from a subculture, right? If you're a sociopath. But what if you wanted to destroy a subculture, right? If your goal is not making money out of something, but making sure that this subculture doesn't become cool, right?
Yeah, no, I see your point. It probably works in the same way. We need to expand the model a little bit to include the people who just want to take the teeth out of the teeth out of the culture. Yeah. That's where the containment comes in.
Yes. Yeah, someone was saying controlled opposition. Mimicry, trad baiting. Anyway,
a lot of that going on.
Death. Sorry, what?
A lot of that going on.
Yeah, I think Burkhall was posting in the Longhouse chat earlier about like you can buy the Wojak trad wife girl, like her dress. You can buy it, and it's called like trad wife dress online.
It's over.
Which, it's over.
Guys.
The women found us, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, here's a photo. Let me bring this up real quick. It was brought up as part of this Carnivore Aurelia stuff. Share screen. So the original tweet is Carnival Aurelius post, ideal day, 5 a.m. wake up on farm in Tuscany, 5 to 6 a.m. meditate, 6 to 7 a.m. breakfast, then walk in the sun with wife and kids, 7 to 8 a.m. read book, 8 to 11 deep work, 11 to 12 workout sport, 12 to 1 p.m. lunch, 1 to 3 p.m. milk cows, play with animals, work on farm with hands, 3 to 4 p.m. eat breast milk ice cream, 4 to 5 p.m. swim, 5 to 6 music and sunset, 6 to 7 dinner with family, 7 to 8 make love to wife, 8 to 9 read book, 9 p.m. bedtime. You? And then someone says, everything this account tweets is funnier knowing it's made by a middle-aged single liberal white woman who has no children and lives in New York. She's basically a porn account for trad larpers.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing where, I'd be reading a Carnivore Aurelius tweet, right, some time ago, and I'd get to like, why are you living on a farm and doing quote unquote deep work? Isn't the point of like living on the farm to sort of disengage from that stuff, right? So this is when I've read Carnivore Aurelius stuff, I've been like, they're sort of, this post is too perfect. Do you see what I'm saying? It's too. It's almost like someone.
It doesn't make
some
any
algorithm
sense,
made this for everyone reading it. Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean, people who live on farms don't think like this. They don't live like this. They don't schedule their day by
that's what I'm saying, right?
Things.
And that's the whole point of the farm life, right?
How many
the...
books are you reading usually on the farm? I mean, most of the time it's just going to be spent doing the work, and it's not like, okay, I get to do like 1 hour of milking the cows, and then I go in the petting zoo or something. I mean, it's like the whole day, the entire day. It feels
very strange.
Yeah, you're spending maybe 8 to 10, 12 hours.
But you can
almost
go down the list here of like who this post is kind of like. It's like a checklist of subcultures that this post is like hitting at, right? To appeal to.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very strange.
There are a lot of these people who these normies who sort of know that something is wrong, and they know that something is up, and they think that the sort of trad life is the answer to it, but they have this kind of their idea of the trad life is like Liver King's life, this kind of like weird mix between like some quote unquote primal elements, and then you have a lot of modern comforts added in there, and they just mix and match whatever they like and whatever they don't like, instead of taking the whole package like you should. So they just can't, they can't tell the simulacrum from the real thing, because they also live in bug world, right? So they just hope for something better.
Yeah.
And that's why they fall for this stuff like this. I mean,
and that's why this basically turns into, well, the life I have now, but I'm in Tuscany and I get to pet animals, right?
Yeah, I get I get to do nature stuff. I just have access to do that. And
but I don't have to do all the yucky nature stuff, right? And
no, you don't shovel shit. You just milk the cow and you pet the rabbit, and that's all that you do. You're not 4 hours of shoveling shit around or sitting on the tractor or something. Or like with the kids,
Northern says, I could tell this was written by a woman when you said make love to wife. The writer's barely disguised fetish. Jesus.
I mean, it's also the same. Like they think about like having 7, 8 kids, and it's like, okay, your time with those kids is like, yeah, okay, 1 hour I just walk with them, and then there's like 1 other hour in the day where I interact with them. They're going to be on you the entire day. They're like, you're not going to wake up and do meditation. It's going to be your kids that are going to pull you out of your bed. And
well, unless you optimize it and get enough kids with enough of an age gap that quickly enough the the older ones can look after the younger ones, but I mean, at some point you're going to have
but
to.
you still have to intervene.
You have to
usually.
look after the youngest ones, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and they're going to need advice and correction and so on. So of course, it's just like this entirely copy stuff. But like with the mass adaptation of this kind of trad stuff, that's just what you're seeing. And there's no other way.
The problem is that if you don't stop and think, right, which I don't blame anyone for doing when you're just scrolling on Twitter. You can find this post and be like, "Oh yeah, that's based," and hit like, right, or hit retweet, and then the sociopath gets a little bit stronger, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to actually you just read it out for yourself. But I mean, you don't want to do that, of course. It's like that's kind of the allure with pornography and stuff. Like when you try to read it out to yourself or maybe explain it to somebody else, then it just sounds ridiculous. But when you're by yourself in the kind of like screen isolated world, you can sort of get away with it. You can kind of stay within that zone where it's just pure wish fulfillment. I mean, the and that's really kind of where we're at. Morgoth put out a video, I don't know if it was this week or last week, that's called The Great Turning Away. And that video actually hit me a lot harder than I expected. He's usually so lucid about how to articulate what's been going on in the world. We talked about the kind of transition from people who were using Facebook in the beginning of the rise of social media, and then Facebook kind of fading into the background, with people going into other things like Instagram and TikTok and so on. And like he just attributed this to the fact that Facebook was the only social
boomer country now, right?
But like Facebook is the only social media that has a sort of connection to reality. And like before you spam me, it's like the idea is really that of Facebook is that you're going to reconnect with people in real life. Like it's like the school book, the faces from the people you went to school with, and then you re-network with them. But like with these other platforms, say like YouTube and TikTok and stuff, you're just supposed to go on there and live in a fantasy world and just be like this kind of fantasy character with the nickname and just do like this.
Twitter as well, especially. I think.
Exactly, and that's
now of course it can bridge that gap somewhat and have terrifying consequences, but Twitter has certainly that aspect as well.
Yes, but that's sort of the point, is that people stop talking to each other through social media. That like it became less interesting to actually interact with the real people with this as a means, and just the platform became an end into itself, just for the acting and all this sort of hyper real pornography stuff that people wanted to engage in. And I mean,
and that's really when you get the weird like people act differently, quote unquote, on different social medias, right? Because different social medias have different sort of soft rules of or etiquettes, right?
And I don't know if this is like intentional by the social media. I think they just adapted to whatever worked. But it seems like, okay, what people wanted was to just go on their screens and just live in a fantasy world and just interact with the real world as little as possible. And you're not just seeing this in the diminishment of like the amount of friendships, but the type of real estate that people are picking. People don't want gardens anymore. They don't want to maintain areas. They don't want big places to live in and just use the space. They just want to have a box where they can be on the screen and live in the kind of fantasy world with as little maintenance as possible, so they can optimize the amount of time they're spending in like this kind of hyper real space. It's a very good articulation as to what's been happening. And of course what Morgoth argues, as was sort of the white pill, if you want to think about it that way, is that people are kind of tired of it. Not that they've had like this kind of epiphany moment and they've become enlightened and based and trad and everything, but they're just sick of it. There's a certain fatigue in all this kind of hyper real role playing and the polarization and all of this ridiculous stuff that we've been going into. So people are just kind of, okay, we'll just go back to try and interact
that's where you get
with the world again.
The whole movement of the people who I wouldn't even say are part of the sphere, but a lot of people who call themselves like post-liberal or
post-left, I guess it's the
post-political or whatever, right? Where they're sort of just burnt out and they just want to return to a reality that might not even exist anymore.
Yeah, they have to rebuild it, right? It's going to be like this slow, boring process, but I do think it's possible if more people are just going away from the net and can just start occupying actual space. Then you can ignite a little ember there, and hopefully, fan the flames long enough for something to emerge.
Nordanas says, you mean you don't post coconut towers on LinkedIn? No. But LinkedIn is the most cringy social media because that is one of those, because that LinkedIn is weirdly both, right? LinkedIn is one of the social medias who are supposed to be about connecting to real people. We're supposed to be representing you as an actual person, but it's also the one that has the most acting on it, right?
Yes, I mean you are supposed to connect to these companies, and that it does matter in terms of like your job prospects and a real profile. But they have to, the nature of like social media and corporate marketing is so cringe. It's just it occupies this space between, okay, we need to be serious and actually solve problems, and we need to appeal to people, and come off as being cooler than other people. So they try to occupy some space where they're both engaging in this kind of like hyperreal fantasy stuff, and also trying to do boring work in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's trying to be a tech company, for example. That's the sort of thing.
The
Even
problem
though you're
is that
doing something super boring.
the only place on the internet where you can engage with sapiens and it actually be funny is our episode on it, not on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So subscribe to the Longhouse, everyone.
Yeah, we're the solution to this problem, by the way. If you didn't know, that's what we were building up to the whole time.
John Smith says everyone is a Gen Xer now. I swear, I'm not quite sure what that means. I mean, I'm not a Gen Xer.
It's the logical endpoint now. If
maybe that is, yeah, that's what he means.
Development.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. The death of cool, unless after a couple of years, the cool is all used up, partly because the new thing is no longer new, and partly because it was diluted into new light, which is inherently uncool. God, I mean, as someone who has been like into role-playing games for quite a long time, and to the point where, I used to read. I bought, my friend's dad stopped playing, so I bought like all of his old advanced D&D books, and used to like sit and read through them. Watching sort of the way that subculture has gone into whatever corporate hellhole it is now has been very saddening. And that's sort of the thing that's on my I know it's kind of like gay to talk about games, but that's the sort of epitome of an example in the back of my head when I'm reading this.
Are you thinking about board games now, or some specific?
Specifically Dungeons and Dragons, but you can put this on like pretty much general. Well, board games still has some of it, but that's also like being unraveled, I think. But I've never been a huge like board game guy. I've been more into like role-playing games like Shadowrun and D&D and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we talked about this beforehand, but like the first thing I thought about when I was looking at this model was actually the PUA, the pickup artist culture. They've just gone through this process perfectly, like to the T. Where if you've read the book that's called The Game by Neil Strauss, who sort of just details everything that happened.
That book is the only interaction I've had with anything that has to do with like pickup artists, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, if you're reading that book, then it's kind of already over. Like the exciting part of that would have been done already. So it started out with like this mystery, like this guy who was the originator, the magician, who were trying to take his sort of hypnosis and magic, sleight of hand skills and take it into picking up women at bars. Then he turned this into more of a craft, and he got like a small following of very dedicated people who wanted to live together and just specializing in trying to learn new techniques for picking up women. Afterward, they were bringing in, they were starting like this kind of courses to bring in the mops so they could get some liquid capital into it. But I mean, they were lacking a little bit in business savvy. So that's when the psychopaths come in. Like that's when you have guys like, RDS Tyler, that's what he's called on YouTube. I mean, he is like a sociopath in this thing. He is just like a pure sociopath, where it's just detailed that he just took every idea. He created his own company that had like the same name, and just used that to mass market essentially, and made himself rich and famous off that. And now it's like, it's just completely used up. These pickup artists aren't cool anymore. The tricks don't work. And if the people who are attending these courses, like they're basically paying prostitutes to sleep with them, right? So they feel like they can get something out of the things.
It's feel like it works.
from just like in like an 8-year perspective, it's just gone through this entire thing to be just completely
it's just dead.
burned out. Yeah.
Nordanon says nerd. Well, I mean, you know where you are, Nordanon. That's all I'm going to say. It's pronounced, oh yeah, I said it wrong. It's epitome, I think. Yeah. English is not my first language. Let's use that. All right. I'm going to restart. After a couple of years, the cool is all used up. Partly because the new thing is no longer new, and partly because it was diluted into new light, which is inherently uncool. As the mops dwindle, the sociopaths loot whatever value is left and move on to the next exploit. They leave behind only wreckage. Devastated geeks who still have no idea what happened to their wonderful new thing and their wonderful friendships they formed around it. Often the geeks all end up hating each other, due first to the stress of supporting mops, and later due to sociopath divide and conquer manipulation tactics. Unless some of the creators are geniuses. If they can give the new thing genuine mass appeal, they can ascend into superstardom. The subculture will reorganize around them into a much more durable form. I won't go into that there. I won't go into that in there. I think he means here. I will point out that this almost never happens without sociopaths. An ambitious creator may know they have mass appeal genius and could be a star, but they very rarely do the know-how of getting from here to there. Do you have any thoughts? Do we know of any subcultures who have been able to? Maybe someone in chat.
I made the comment in the Element chat that America First is a subculture where the originator is also the sociopath. So it's kind of stayed the same way. I mean that's kind of how it has to happen when like the people who are actually starting it are also completely mentally sick. Then they can retain that, even though they might lose some fanatics by showing their cards. But I mean, they get more into it, I think, later in the article, what you can do to avoid this happening. But it is quite standard if you have some kind of like sensitive, more artistic people who create the cool. They're usually not business savvy. It's two very different types of skills.
Usually, yeah.
It's a sort of tale as old as time, this kind of like star manager relationship thing where one is going to get exploited by the other and so on.
Warhammer 40k has recently gone mainstream, in my opinion, says Jake Raynor. Yes, but has it survived? I remember seeing like children's books about Warhammer 40k with like pride stuff in it, I think. I don't know. Maybe I will count 40k as a huge success if it gets like let's say like a TV show, right? You get the 40k TV show, let's say the Horus Heresy TV show, and it retains all of its inherent reactionary elements, which I doubt it ever will, right? All right, well, sure, if it's just about getting there, then yes, I agree. Yes. But the whole point is that once you hit the mainstream, you're kind of dead anyway, right? At least to the fanatics and the geeks and the creators. Also, once we get to the end of it, if there's any time left, we'll do like a short AMA. Like if anyone has any questions just in general they want to ask us, just post them in the chat and I'll keep them. And if there's time at the end of this, we'll just chat for a bit. Let's see what people are saying in chat here real quick. ESG ratings would butcher a 40k TV show. Yeah, that's true, that the creators can stay on as sort of like the new elite if they get to control the IP. And as long as they can keep that away from the money power, I suppose it can live on in a certain sense. Okay, so what can be done about this cycle? This is a geek question. The subculture life cycle is a problem only from a geek perspective. As far as mops are concerned, it provides reliable, low-cost waves of novelty entertainment and casual social relationships. Subscribe to the Longhouse, by the way. As far as sociopaths are concerned, it generates easily exploited pools of prestige, sex, power, and money. That's how you know we're not in the sociopath category, because there's been very little of all of those doing this.
I feel
have
cheated.
to do better.
Be better, guys.
From a utilitarian point of view, mops hugely outnumber geeks. So in terms of total social value, it's all good. You can't make omelets without breaking some eggheads. So what is to be done? Geeks can refuse to admit mops. In fact, successful subcultures always do create costly barriers to entry to keep out the uncommitted. Anyone who's ever been to a game store knows of the guy who requires like a laundry list of like nerd credentials before you even get to buy something, right? Piggybacking on the board game stuff or the role-playing game stuff. In the heyday of subcultures, those were called posers or poseurs. Mop exclusion keeps the subculture comfortable for geeks, but severely limits its potential. Often there's a struggle between geeks who like their cozy little club as it is, and geeks who want a shot at greatness for themselves or the group or the new thing itself. In any case, subculture boundaries are always porous, and if the new thing is cool enough, mops will get in regardless. The optimal mop to geek ratio is maybe 6-1. At that ratio, the mops provide more energy than they consume. A ratio above about 10-1 becomes unworkable. It's a recipe for burnout among supporting fanatics. Ideally, the ratio could be controlled. I think few subcultures understand this imperative, and I'm not sure how it could be done, even if one did understand. Mops move in herds. Usually either there are only a few, or their numbers quickly grow too large. So the idea that the difficulty here is in if you open the gates a little bit, a lot of people will flood in accidentally, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know where he gets the numbers from. I don't want to be that kind of source police
No,
guy,
I think he's just winging it here, like he's going on instinct, right?
Yeah, I mean, 1 to 6, that sounds very, very small. I don't know how much space these mops are going to take, but especially in like the digital age, right, where people are consuming videos and everybody has internet access. I think that sounds like it's very, very small. Maybe it's like if it's like physical communities, I could see 1 to 6, but I think that if it's like
I'm getting a bit of a feeling that this person is almost talking from the perspective of like music subcultures or like music or like band genres, right?
Yeah, no, that seems to make sense.
It seems like he's talking at least from a physical point of view, but I think it still applies.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, because I was thinking about like we did the episode on black metal as well, like the sort of black metal subculture and how that became mainstreamed. It kind of goes the exact same way, although I can't really name the same names with that degree of precision, but it checks out.
Yeah, right. Sociopaths only show up if there's enough mops to exploit. So excluding or limiting mops is also a strategy for excluding sociopaths. Some subcultures do understand this, and they succeed with it. And Green River has been in the chat, and it is certainly a strategy he seems to employ with whom he surrounds himself with, right? There seems to be a very clear sort of program of vetting that you have to go through before you're accepted, right?
As it should be.
He says, I think he's thinking of a space with, for example, 100 people. If less than 20 of those people are fanatics, the whole atmosphere is different than if it's just 10. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. English is very hard. The the Anglo-Saxon mouth sounds is not made for me.
Now, in the last video, the MIB review, we were getting shit in the comments for being like LARPers, sounding too American, and now we're getting shit from like Norwegians for not being English enough. I mean,
I can't help it. I'm a product of my time and my education. That's why my accent is all fucked up.
Yeah, I have a single mother. That's why I can't do English properly. Sorry. Blame the nanny state.
Very good. Alternatively, you could recognize sociopaths and eject them. Geeks may be pretty good at the recognizing, but they are lousy at the ejecting. Mops don't recognize sociopaths, and anyway, they don't care. Mops have little investment in the subculture and can just walk away when the sociopaths ruin it. By the time the sociopaths show up, mops are numerically most of the subculture. The sociopath manipulate the mops, and it's hard for the geeks to overrule an overwhelming majority. You will have to, at that point, you're just going to have to like make your own thing, right? And to yet again bring up like the D&D stuff, there's been like after, what is it, 5th edition, which came out, it's a long time ago now, but it's like modern in air quotes. There has been like a resurgence of people printing like old open, is it OSR, the license like for the old versions. There's been a bit of a resurgence in people printing that and people going back and like playing that and sort of creating a mini new subculture for themselves that isn't being controlled by anyone else.
Yeah, so they learned this lesson. And they were able
well, I'm not sure if they learned it. I think it's just a natural way of things, right? It's like if you've lost, just move on.
Yeah.
Right.
And
just
repeat.
Start again.
Time is a flat circle. You have to do this over and over again.
Well, it's either that or you have to like, consume the soulless version of the cool thing. Now, ideally, your fanatics gatekeep well enough that it's it never gets to this point, right?
Yes.
Let's see here. Yep. Anyway, horribly, geeks need sociopaths. If the new thing is ever going to be more than a geeky hobby or a brief fad that collapses under the weight of mob invasion, here we get to something interesting, because that's the how do the fanatics or the geeks do that gatekeeping? And his solution is what he calls be slightly evil. The subcultural mode mostly ended around 2000. There are still subcultures, new ones all the time, but they no longer have the cultural and societal force they used to. Social force, sorry, they used to. The classical model of subcultures no longer works for the reason given here, plus others I'll describe in upcoming writing. I don't think it can be rescued. However, the fluid mode, my hope for the future, resembles the subcultural mode in many ways. The same social dynamics may play out unless there is a powerful antidote. A slogan of Rouse may point the way, be slightly evil. Or, the geeks need to learn to use some of the sociopath's tricks. The geeks can capture more of the value they create, and they get better at ejecting true sociopaths. Which is where the real power lies. It's sort of training geeks or the fanatics, which would include myself in this, I think, to be better at spotting people who aren't, worth my time, basically. And just saying no.
I mean, I'm just laughing at the formulation there, be slightly evil. I'm sort of imagining the Wikipedia article on Machiavelli, the prince, right? And sort of like just explaining the content, just like, okay, be slightly evil. That's like it's just
be a dick.
Pragmatic political science, But
yeah,
okay, I know you want to be nice, but you have to be slightly evil to compete.
You have to be a bit evil.
You don't have to be.
We do a little trolling,
totally evil. Just a little bit, okay, please.
Rao concludes, specific strategies for sociopathy are outside of the scope of this book. However, I have an abstract suggestion. Rao concludes his analysis by explaining that his sociopaths are actually nihilists, in much the same sense as I use the word. Serious subcultures are usually eternalistic. The new thing is a source of meaning that gives everything in life purpose. Eternalistic naivete makes subcultures much easier to exploit. Slightly evil defense of a subculture requires realism, letting go of eternalist hope and faith in imaginary guarantees that the new thing will triumph. This is like reading like an analysis of Green River. I'm sorry, I know he only posted like that's me, but such realism is characteristic of nihilism. Nihilism has its own delusions, though. It is worth trying to create beautiful and useful new things, and it's worth defending them against nihilism. A fully realistic worldview corrects both eternalistic and nihilistic errors. Combining what works in eternalism and nihilism amounts to the complete stance, which is essentially the same thing as the fluid mode.
Fluid mode activated.
That's the end of it. Yeah. Fluid mode, complete stance activated.
I used the nihilism to destroy the nihilism. Basically, that's the correct meme.
Let's see here. Nordan says, I dislike the use of the word evil to describe gatekeeping in group preferences. It's subtly subversive. That is true, and if I were to defend the author here, I suppose it's mostly that he's saying act slightly like the sociopaths. But there could be a better phrasing, right?
Well, I don't know. I think it's even though it's like you could say it's subversive. I think everybody understands it much better. You could use like a more it's almost wording, but it would. I think it would.
It's almost like the sort of dichotomy of like chivalry, right? Where you have to have the code of conduct, but also the sort of you have to temper both the etiquette, but also the fierceness, right? So you can use the sword at the right time and the glove at the right time, right?
Yes. I mean, yeah, but of course, if pragmatism comes first, then that's sort of a little bit beyond good and evil. Sometimes the pragmatic choice is not the good choice, and I think people kind of know that on a much deeper level. It just depends if you have like the stomach to actually go there or not, and I think that's the difference between people.
Yeah. Norlana says, I prefer asserting my own morality rather than playing the bad guy, so to speak. Well, I mean, that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you can assert your own morality, but you end up...
You can't be the devil's advocate forever.
Right? I mean, you end up getting into situations where you realize that like the most pragmatic choice for everybody is what maybe goes against your morality, and what do you do then? It's you can either be pragmatic or you can stick to your morality, but then you just stay in the good camp. You can't really do much, right? So I think everybody enters this place at some point where you realize like, damn, I had all these rules and now I have to make some decision that just completely breaks with it, right?
Yeah, you kind of painted yourself into a corner, right?
It typically happens.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any final comments on this article here or this stuff?
I think we've had a lot of good discussions already just running the article through.
I do agree.
So we're at an hour mark.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up something else that was posted in the chat, which was slightly relevant to this, but it's also like the most online thing I've ever read. Which is from an account called The Hellenist, which is another one of those, that we talked about, like Carnival Rallies. There's these like artwork / statue accounts, you know what I'm talking about. Okay,
statue
so
with the red eyes, yeah.
Yeah, if everyone probably knows this picture, right? If you might not, but this is like posted like either as like, yeah, this is Chad Americanism, or like some incel will post this and be like, women will never understand, right? Etc. But the Hellenist went full. Can I say the R word on YouTube? I don't know. 7 things wrong with this image. A girl's first kiss should be on her wedding day. Second, the girl is embarrassing the boy by kissing him in public. 3, the boy is playing football. Ball games are for little children. 4, the boy and the girl go to the same school. Co-education is asinine. 5, the boy's hair is short. Boys should grow their hair long, then cut it at age 18 to sacrifice to Apollo. 6. They're wearing purple. Purple is a color reserved for royalty. 7. The boy's number is 81. 81 is a historically gay number. American Gothic is a euphemism for American decadent.
Oh, very cool.
I'm not sure if this person is being serious, but
I think
this
it's a
has to
joke,
be
right?
the like most online thing I've ever written. No, sorry, read.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect for Twitter.
Oh yes, it is. I'm sure
Then we go back
off
to like
everyone at the same time.
The Twitter kind of Facebook divide, or this social media. It's something that can only exist in the Twitter sphere. The way that the ecosystem has developed, you can't. I don't see any like boomer Facebook posters doing that stuff. So it's just very much within the sort of like you play this character stuff, and that's what your entire life is about, instead of relating to real people.
Yeah. All right. If anyone has any questions for us in the chat, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be about this. Post them right now, or we're just gonna, leave. I have stuff to do. I'm sure Ludwig has stuff to do. Chud posting. Yeah, that's a way of putting it. It sounds schizo enough to be true. What's my favorite color? What's it called in English? Is it like royal blue or navy blue? Let me check. Yeah, royal blue is my favorite. Yours, Ludwig.
I don't know. It changes right now. It's some shade of like antique gray that I have in my living room.
Antique gray, interesting. I'm not going to answer that. Based blue enjoyer. My wife's favorite color is a shade of green, which she has won me over on certain things, like the darker shades of green. But I'm very much a blue boy.
Blue boys rise up.
Member of the Blue Man Group.
Yes.
Whom I've actually seen, by the way, Walrus Lore. I've seen the Blue Man Group live in America.
Is it a thing kind of outside of Arrested Development? That's the only reference that I have.
Oh yeah, it is. It's like an actual show you can go to. It was in Florida.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't remember much of it, but it's been like 10 years, probably. It's a very strange thing they do. I've stepped foot on the cursed continent, yes. About 10 years ago. I visited New York, Washington, D.C., one more place along the eastern coast, and Florida, Orlando specifically. I went to the Space Center as well. So there's some more lore for you, Norden on. Washington D.C. was a very interesting place to visit, because it's very much a lot of the buildings surrounding it, like the old town. Is it Greenwich? Is that what it's called? It's very much sort of old. You can see in the layout of it that it's based on like older colonial stuff, and then you have the weird like the center of DC has all these like grand buildings, right? You know, when Americans build like a library, they build like this huge structure with like Roman pillars. It's like the most extravagant thing you've ever seen, pretty much. And it's just this like library.
I do appreciate those things. The kind of grandness of the American project. Right? They just build this massive infrastructure, and
it's certainly impressive to a certain degree. Yeah. All right, I think it's time to end it. We'll just have to call it. calling time of death on the stream. I was trying to remember what we're talking about next week. Next week, we have booked Cows to come on, and we are going to be talking about her effort and the Americans' challenges in sort of rediscovering their identity. And especially for someone like her who is of, as I understand it, English or British stock, returning from America to Britain and trying to sort of reconnect, and if that's even possible, to reconnect with her roots. Maybe we might reach out to someone like Nordhuger as well, now that I think of it, because he's, trying his best as well.
We all try our best, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we should just.
I'm actually very much looking forward to that, and we're going to be skirting around the American question as well, of course. So
yeah, naturally,
it's going to be a nice, nice inflammatory stream, probably.
But yeah, just to end the stream off with some shilling. Follow me on Twitter as usual. readpraxarchy.com if you're not already doing it, and. I think we'll try to do some Let's Play on Saturday again. I don't know if you can do it. I can definitely set up some time for that.
I'm probably going to be able to make at least some of it. So yeah, we'll try to do something.
Yeah, we're doing Heroes of Might and Magic 3.
Let's go.
Random maps. So join in for that if you're
okay. So once and for all, I know how to pronounce your name. So it's Tamina Al-Haq. Tamin Ahol. I can't do it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Until then, have a great weekend and a great next week.
Yep. Thank you. Goodbye.